Assalamu alaikum, my brother.
Well, look at my son.
Going. Everything good?
Yes, sir. Yeah, everything's good. Yes, sir.
All right. Thank you for joining. Appreciate it, my brother. Let me get this thing started by introducing the program. Welcome to the Eruption of Possible. I am your host, Dr. Kevin H. Abdul Rahman. We are here to introduce a narrative that is rare and that you may have never heard of or discussed. Our focus is on the successfully transitioned ex-offender, which is a hidden community in America, because no matter how great their achievements are, once their past is revealed, they're usually judged by what they did and not who they have become. We would like to create a new narrative that illustrates these people as fathers and mothers, as breadwinners, as citizens, as people who make the most of their second chance, and mostly as former practitioners of crime and violence who have discarded their criminal past to be a vital part of defining how we address the problems of crime and gun violence. Going to run through quickly a few numbers here. The Bureau of Justice estimates that more than 600,000 people are released from state and federal prisons in the United States each year. Additionally, about 9 million people are released from local and county jails annually. With more than 23 million ex-felons in America, only 2.2 million are incarcerated. And we'll talk about that when we talk about recidivism. In a study by FWD, US, and Cornell University, nearly 1 in 2 American adults has an immediate family member who is currently or has previously spent time behind bars. We probably can assume that the rate is in Black and brown communities is even higher. According to a study, and you'll appreciate this, Mikal, according to a study by the RAND Corporation, 3.8% of small business owners have a criminal record. More than 1.7 million are employed by them. Within the group of business owners who have criminal histories, approximately 433,000 have a history of felonies. This is the narrative we want you to reflect on, the successfully transitioned ex-felon. My guest tonight is my good brother, Mikal Hickson, who I grew up with many, many, many moons ago. Welcome to the Eruption of Possible, my brother.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Glad to be here.
Okay. Now, I was reading your book right here, and we gonna get a little bit into the title, which I really like. But to step it off right away is help us understand your journey. Your journey in prison, before you went to prison, how you end up going to prison, not your particular case, but how you evolved into this little boy who went to church, as I was reading in your book, into someone who entered the federal prison system.
Well, let me start off like this. Let me say I have 4 children, two boys, 2 girls.
Uh-huh.
I have 3 grandchildren, 1 girl and 2 boys, and I have another grandson on the way. One of my daughters is pregnant now with a grandson on the way. Um, and I'm very, so it's a big difference on how I lived when I was a teenager and a young adult than the way I'm living now with a family, with grandchildren.
Right.
Now to go back to my story, and I don't really like to revisit my story. That's why that was one of the reasons why I wrote the book, so that I can explain all of the reasons why I made the mistakes that I made in my mind, the reasons why I made the mistakes that I made. And I wanted to get that out. And now I have such other things that I'm so thrilled about and happy about moving forward in my life, that going back is kind of hard for me. But let's do that. Let's do it. Well, I guess I know it was something special about me when I was young, because for some reason, I always had a rebellious spirit. And I don't know why, because I'm I thought I was a nice person, but I had a rebellious spirit. If somebody told me to do something, I would listen, but then I would try it my way opposed to doing it their way.
Right.
So I guess that got me into some trouble at times. But but I remember with being in elementary school, going to school with holes in my shoes and dirty clothes. You know what I mean?
Put the cardboard in the bottom.
Yeah, putting cardboard in my shoes. But
Yeah, we've been through that.
You came up the way I came up with.
Right.
You know, you had a lot of families, and I'm from the Haines Street, Germantown area, but particularly at Haines Street. You have a lot of families. Some of them have seven children, 9 children, 5 children. So we were used to having big families and knowing a lot of people in the neighborhood. So if you know, and then talking about each other was almost a game that we played. Busting on each other, talking about each other, embarrassing each other was almost like a game that we played.
They call that the dozens.
Yeah, that's what they call it now. So so you had to be thick-skinned, and it made you either tough or it made you weak if you couldn't deal with people messing, talking about you, clowning you. And I felt at a young age, I felt very intimidated because you have some families that mothers and fathers have good jobs, and they spruce their children up the same way today, buy them Louis Vuitton and heavyweight gear, and then other children that can't afford that, maybe wearing less. So it becomes a situation where, and as a child, I remember those things as a child. They were really they were wounds that I felt.
I remember my first pair of bell bottoms was hand-me-downs.
Yeah. So a lot of times the wounds from childhood can carry on into your adult life unless they've been repaired.
Right.
And I write in a book where how my wounds were repaired. And that's why I have such a compassion for other younger people, because I understand the wounds that they may be having, and I know they can be repaired.
Right.
So to go more into my story, so I had that kind of mean streak to want what I wanted. And I remember sitting down with my mother and father. I don't know if I broke that down in the book, but I remember sitting down. My father, Deke, worked for the recreation department.
Right.
I sat down with my mother and father. I don't know if I did them together or simultaneously. And I told them, man, I don't know why I was feeling this way at a young age. I told them that I don't want a job because both of y'all work and we still got to get surplus food. I said, man, I'll go up on the corner of Haines Street. Guys got Cadillac cars. Guys is living comfortable. Why would I want to get a job?
Right.
And I remember my mindset, and then that took me to going up on a corner. And I really was raised up in the church. My father wasn't really, he was in and out of the church. So I knew something about the streets and the church, but I was basically going to church with my parents at a young age, but being dissatisfied with my living conditions, and I wanted more. I went up to Haynes and Morton right out of church and just sat on the corner ear hustling with dope fiends that was on the corner trying to figure out how do you make money. I heard about drugs and making money. I just went up there and just dropped out of school and just went up there and just ear hustled until I knew enough to go and get started in the game.
Right.
And that took me to violence, standing up for products that I had, so you get into violence, and it just leads you on. But I look at it whereas though my whole the problem that I had to solve was learning how to be a man and make money legally. Because by nature, a man wants to have money to provide for himself and those people that he loves, that he cares about. So that's just a natural thing to want to be a provider and have money. But it took me almost 60 years, man. It took me almost 60 years to realize that I could do it legally.
Right.
You know what I mean? I didn't, a lot of it was my own insecurities by thinking that I wasn't competent enough to do it legally.
But a lot of times that whole process that you're talking about, you get to a certain point where you start hustling backwards. You know what I mean? And then you have to, figure out the system ain't working for me. And, I could, one of the things when I came home, I tell people all the time, I didn't know what I was going to do, but I knew what I wasn't going to do. Right. And the two things I wasn't going to do is go back to hustling and go back to jail. because I knew if I went back to hustling, it was going to lead to going back to jail. So that's a whole process that you have to make that commitment to yourself, not to the world outside, but that commitment to yourself. You know what I mean? Go ahead.
Well, it was actually it was a spiritual awakening that really made me want to do it the right way.
Right.
Because like I told you, at a young age, I had a rebellious spirit. I didn't care about going to jail. I didn't, and my father always instilled in me, whatever you do, think about it and be willing to take the consequences for your actions.
Mm-hmm.
So I knew what I was getting involved in. And I knew the time that it carried. I did the research on whatever I may do. I knew I didn't go into prison and have and wake up to life and say, "Damn, I'm facing 20." I know I thought I was trying to prepare for whatever I was doing, but I knew jail was I was on the path for jail. So when it happened, I wasn't surprised.
So you went to jail. You've been to jail a few times, whatever. Was there a defining moment in your life when you said, "Okay, this ain't working. I'm going to do what I got to do, but I'm going to do it the right way"?
Yeah, well, I told you it took me. I was 56, and I was sent back to the. I guess when I was a teenager, my first federal offense, got
Right.
7 year UFAC in Petersburg, Virginia. I was a teenager or a young adult because I got a UFAC. I probably was
Right.
under 21 or so.
Right.
Either right. Yeah, I had to be under 21. I got a UFAC 7 years. And when I turned 56 or 57, I think around 56, they was sending me back there, man, for a conspiracy. It's
Right.
another case that got entangled up with.
Right.
And I went back there. And that's when I was saying, like, man, and I looked around, like I was here when I was a teenager, man. I don't believe I'm back here.
Right.
And so then I started, I had realized that I had lost all spirituality from growing up in the Nation of Islam. When the Nation of Islam fell, I couldn't latch on to the Sunni teachings. And I knew I was a mess spiritually. I grew up in the church, so I always understood God. So I knew things about spirituality, and I had no direction at that. So I really started researching more on trying to just seek God and seek doing the right thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I wrote that in my book, man. I read all kind of books, man, Buddhist books. I read all kind of books to try to just find myself.
And you bring up a good point, because people who've never been to jail, I heard somebody say the other day, I was talking to somebody and he was talking about how you go to jail and you become a better criminal. But that's not true. You go to jail and you start researching and on yourself, because nobody likes that predicament. So the first thing you do is, how did I get in this predicament? And it makes you go inside yourself, introspection and reflection. And that's a very valid point you bring up, because when I always ask people about that defining moment, it always comes out how you had to go into yourself and start identifying who you were. And what happens in that journey is, for the first time in your life, sometimes you retrieve your humanity.
Right.
Because we so into, and this society does it to us, it's not accidental. We're so into our material worth that we lose sight of our human worth. So we're so separated from our humanity. That's why I call my book in this process The Eruption of Possible, because we're so far separated from our humanity. Once that is reintroduced to you, your growth is unlimited. And that's what you're talking about right now. How you started reflecting, and all of a sudden you got reconnected with that spirituality that it wasn't dead; it was just lying dormant. You know what I mean?
Right. So I think, and as now I can talk to a lot of other people, younger people. I have this passion for people younger than me, probably because my father really put that on me when I was younger. And I was going in and out of jail, and I did a documentary. My father's in a documentary talking. I asked him, like, why were you bringing young people to me that needed guidance? And you knew I was messing up all my life. Why would you bring the young people to me? But he said, I knew you was a leader. I knew you always looked out for people younger than you. So that's why I brought them to you. But I had that passion, man, for just passing information down to younger people. And all the mistakes that I've made in my life, a lot of them didn't make those same mistakes because they watched me make mistakes.
And Mikal, you talk about this. Just because you're doing something don't mean you want that same thing for somebody else.
Right, exactly. Right. And that's the
Talk about
point.
that.
And that's the point I'm trying to make. I have like 17 cousins. My father had 7 brothers, and all of them had, like I told you, a lot of children.
Right.
So it's about 17 of us. We actually, my brother Jamel also has like a family text, and we all on this text.
Right.
You know, it's like 15 of us, or 15 to 17 of us on it.
Right.
And none of them, and they all, my father brought them, you know, one at a time, different ones to me that I didn't know. They were younger than me. They 10 years, 15 years younger than me. Mm-hmm. And I kind of was raised with them. And all of them, man, either business agents for unions, man, they got good jobs, engineers. Like nobody in my family has followed the footsteps that I had as far as going to prison. Right. And it's all male alpha males. Right. You know what I mean? That are strong minded, and nobody took that route. A lot of it because I told them, you know, they don't want to go this route, and then just seeing that there was other ways to make money. Although I didn't have those opportunities for having a prison record, like you said. A lot of things I wasn't privy to because I had a record, but I could direct them into going into industries that they didn't have a record, and they blossomed. So I feel proud about that, man. That I still had that passion. That I'm working with some nonprofit groups now. One of them at Back Hain Street. That's called Community Helpers. This is a group of about 20 guys, and I was working with them when I was working with Men Who Care at Germantown, and they came together. They called Community Helpers, and they were trying to close Roosevelt down because they was fighting after school so much, and even the neighbors were saying it was becoming a loop.
Roosevelt meaning Roosevelt Junior High.
Roosevelt Junior High School, yeah. And these brothers, Community Helpers, they came. They put 2 guys all around the school on each corner. We did this for free the first year, and they stopped all the fighting up there. You know what I mean? So I'm just giving a shout out to them. And then there's another group called the National Love Team. Some young brothers out in North Philly that I work with, but you know that's doing great things in the city. But I'm just saying that to say that I still have that passion for people younger than me, man. I have a knack that I can reach them. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you and I both. Hey, listen. So we talk about the system and how we're shaped from our childhood as far as our experiences with in the streets and stuff like that. But I really love the chapter of your book. I mean, the title of your book. It says, "The Lamb in Line for the Slaughter: A Philadelphia Story." Talk about that. What is the thought process that made you come up with that title?
Right. Well, that's the title that came up. You know, you're looking like 60 years into the past.
Right.
Younger. I didn't know it like this the way I'm explaining it, but right. I saw myself as a lamb. Right. Coming right out of church, man, going right to a heroin corner. Right. I was taught by guys that were using heroin. Right. I just sit on the corner with them and just listen to how they con people, how they make money, all the different ways to make money. So that's so that I was a lamb going out there, man. Right. And I could have been slaughtered if it wasn't for my I think the prayers of my grandmother, because I was her favorite grandchild. Right. And my mother, and I talk about that, we show that in the documentary, how my mother, how they said they used to pray for me to get off the corner. Right. You know what I mean? And that's why I called it the Lamb in Line for the Slaughter, because I didn't know what I was walking into. Murderers, I mean, people that this life was something that they chose and they knew about it. I was just in it to make money. I didn't know that, I was walking in.
And we thought we wanted that life.
No, I wanted money, and it wasn't. I wanted money. I didn't want all that came with it. But I wanted money, and that was the opportunities I thought was just that was available to me, and I didn't know better. Now, if I knew better, I would have probably did better. Right.
Well, that's what I mean. We kind of walked into that because the whole thing, and I call this the 3 P's: poverty, peer influence, improving your manhood.
Right.
Those 3 things have sidetracked so many young people.
Right.
Because nobody wants to be poor. Nobody wants to have cardboard in their shoes and be laughed at when they go outside and the kids laughing at you because you got them hand me down. Like I told you, my first pair of bell bottoms was so big because they were hand me downs.
And some guys getting tailor-made. You know what I mean? You know they got tailor-mades on. You
got you know what I mean. And then the whole concept of peer influence, we all know about that. And then as kids, especially you, in fact, I got a story I'm gonna tell you about a kid from Haines Street, with that proving that manhood thing. I got this kid a scholarship to Abington Friends, which is back in the early 90s. It was $10,000-$12,000 a year to go in, right? And when I got him that scholarship, the principal called me 2 weeks after he started school and said, everybody wants to throw your boy out because he got a chip on his shoulder, this, that, and other thing, right? So I said, listen, let me talk to him. So we went to lunch, right? And what happened was I had to explain to him, and this comes with the proving your manhood. I said, up here, when these kids are joking with you and teasing you and stuff, they ain't not trying to chump you. You follow what I'm saying? This ain't like down the way where somebody say something to you, you got to defend yourself because they trying to chump you.
Right.
When he understood the difference in environments,
right?
You know, and understood that this environment ain't the same as back home down the way. At the end of the year, the principal calls me and says, guess who the French student of the year is? And he was in 9th grade at the time. Through the whole school, 12, 11, 10. I said, his name was Michael Jordan. I said, Michael Jordan? He said, yeah, he's the French student of the year.
Oh, wow.
I mean, it wasn't complicated. It was like, dude, this environment is not the same. Your manhood is not being challenged. So a lot of times, you know, I know a lot of guys, and I tell people, and I think you probably know this too. I know a lot of guys that are murderers, but they ain't real killers. They, you know, one guy I know, they robbed somebody and they gagged him, and the guy, you know, choked and suffocated on the gag. Well, you got a murder, but you ain't no killer. You know what I mean? Right. But this whole concept of proving our manhood, you know what I mean, has caused a lot of tragic incidents, and it don't have to be. And I like something as simple as they're not trying to, you know, chump you. Right. He got it. He ended up going to the University of Penn. He's in the University of Penn Hall of Fame. You follow what I'm saying? Yeah. So I understand what you're saying when you talk about, you know, this urge to help young people, because you know what, you sit back and they always say hindsight is 20/20, but we blew a lot of we all have a lot of potential that we blew, you know. Right. You don't want to see nobody else blow that, you know. I talk about all the time. Martin and Malcolm, they never made it to 40. Right. And imagine if the potential that all of us had growing up, if that potential came out early, as opposed to being smothered with that street mentality. You know what I mean?
Right. Well, the segue into what you were saying, the environment, man, plays a big part. Right. And that's that's what was missing, us being able to mingle with the younger people in certain environments. Like I tell people our school, they closed the Germantown school down, and now they turned into an apartment complex. But right across the street from Germantown High was Town Hall. Right. And I don't know if you remember that, you know, you could go there and you can find out about services that you need that the city offers. Then in the basement, they had a boxing ring. They had stuff down there, they had activities in the basement. I think I remember that. I don't know if you remember that. And a lot of champions came out of that gym. Yeah. You know, my father said he used to box in that gym. But being down there, you know, you have a chance to mingle with older guys, and then boys need to have some kind of release for just the energy that we have, the competitive energy we have. If you just running around in the street and don't have no activity, some kind of sports activity or some kind of activity to release that competitive energy that you have, you know, that's why they end up fighting each other and shooting and killing. But that, you know, I want to fight for that, to try to get that building back open. It's just been sitting there for almost 30 years. and it was like a hub. It was a
Right.
hub for the
Right.
Germantown community, and it
Right.
was and it was a gym in the basement.
It was
You know
like a
what I mean?
clearinghouse. It was like it was like
Everything was there. You know what I
yeah.
mean? So we don't have now we don't have rec centers. We don't have even Waterview. We don't have rec centers in the community for people to
You,
go to. The
you know
ping
what?
pong tables, the pool tables. So you wonder why these children is out here just running reckless. We haven't set up the apparatuses for them to have things to do so we can control our environment a little better.
You know what else? You know what institution has fallen that we don't have that we had? A lot of us should have took more advantage of it. The barbershop. You remember when you go to the barbershop, the old heads be in the barbershop and you'd be waiting in line to get your hair cut, and the old heads would drop a lot of wisdom on you. Right. So it was almost like a passing, a rites of passage almost sometimes with the old. You don't have that, and that's I think the role you and I have to play now. We have to pass that wisdom down to people. You know what I mean? So
coming after us,
right? And the way you do it is a lot of, like you just said, programs. You got to have. I started a program called Total Response Incorporated. Some of the guys I work with are in their 50s now, and I'm proud as hell of them. You know what I mean?
Right.
Proud as hell of them. And I had this thing. I don't know if you had it when I came home. I had this competition with trying to rob the penitentiary of young bodies. You know what I mean?
Exactly, man. We all have to find how we can contribute, man, to make life better, man, for those coming after us.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because I think that's what happens, man. If the generation before you drop the ball, then we had these young guys just out here just running wild, man, with no real direction. And then being directed by women, they start acting with all emotions. Acting with emotions rather than thinking things out.
Right. Something I want to talk about, because it's a pet peeve with me. Because every time you look at the news or whatever, they always throw up these statistics about recidivism rate, right? And some people say 70%. But you and I have a different viewpoint, because we saw people going home and we knew who was coming back and who wasn't coming back just by the lifestyle they lived when they were in prison. And nobody ever talks about the non-returners. Right. So what's very confusing to me is we have all the stats I read to you. We have all these millions and millions of ex-offenders, but we only got 2.2 people locked up. Plus, when a person recidivism, that means it ain't a whole lot of people going back to jail. It means the same people are going back to jail. So you report statistics. If I go back to jail 4 times, right? You report statistics like it's 4 different people,
right?
But it's the same person. That's what recidivism means. So what we have to talk about, and because the guys you grew up with from down Hain Street, a lot of them guys flipped the script and have become positive people. Right. We have to get some data about non-returners, because they don't talk about non-returners. And I don't care if you got, and I don't believe this stat, if it's 70% recidivism rate, how meaningful is that 30% that don't return? You know what I mean? Right. So, talk about how many people that you know that are not recidivism, are doing things, that have companies, that have businesses,
right,
or work job. You follow what I'm saying? Right.
Well, it's a lot of people that don't go back, right. And I can name somebody, even in my family personally, my brother that's doing fantastic now. He's been working for like 30 years, man, home remodeling, and he just was locked up one time in the county jail. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And he came home and told us, man, he was a part of our organization at the time. You know what I mean? We was out in the streets. And he said, man, I'm done with this. I mean, that jail life ain't for me. He said, I went there one time, I got sick. They tell me when to go to bed, when to get up, what to eat. And my brother gave us back the keys to the car that was part of the business and his beeper, and he was gone, man. He got a job, man. He's been doing fantastic. And there's a lot of people that have opportunity, that don't think. Some people that just don't believe that they capable of doing the right thing. And I don't know if that makes sense to you, because at one point
It
I
does.
couldn't
It
read.
does.
At one point I couldn't read. I had stopped reading the paper and reading for so long that
Mhm.
I couldn't even put the words together. You know what I mean? So that made me not apply for work for certain jobs. So you never know how many people, they have different reasons why they don't try to do legitimate work, because they had these handicaps in their mind. And like I said, it's in your mind, because whatever you put your mind to, you can do it. See, I end up writing a book. And for somebody that can't spell, I wrote a book. You know what I mean? So
But you hit it on the head when you said handicap. We inherit these handicaps from our social order because the powers that be, they don't want us to reach our full potential.
right,
You know what I mean? And again, I always talk about this. Imagine Malcolm and Martin never made it to their 40s. So imagine if all that power, if all that power in you came out before we did all that dumb stuff. I even
right,
see in your book you explain. Uh, I'm looking at this. It says something about oh, if planted early enough and cultivated properly in a child's life, will guide it successfully through the storms of sin and iniquity. You're absolutely right, brother, on that. You have to plant the seed. James
right,
Baldwin said one time, he said the tree grows because the seed remains intact. So
right,
no matter what storm hits it, you know what I mean, it
right,
always can regenerate itself. And I think what you're saying is that we have to regenerate our communities.
right, right, right,
And we have to regenerate it by planting the seeds of positivity in
right.
young people.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
You
That's
know what I
right.
mean? You know, this whole and one of the things we people talk about, well, back in your day and all that stuff. I said we had guns, we had shootings and all that kind of stuff. We didn't have assault rifles where we pulled the trigger and 30 people got shot. I
Right,
think
right,
that's the big difference in today is that they have given this generation a whole arsenal that we would have never even imagined having.
right, right,
And again, back in our day, we didn't just shoot people to be shooting people. That's
right.
you
A
know what
whole
I
lot
mean.
had to
It
lead
was
up to
a
that.
it was
A
a
whole lot had to
legitimate
lead up
beef.
to that. Yeah, a whole lot had to lead up to that before it got to that level.
Right, right. You know what I mean. So we got a lot of work to do, Mikal. We got a lot of work to do,
Well,
and
there's a lot of organizations, not to cut you off, but there's a lot of organizations doing the work. I think and one thing I want to bring out this, we had people with cliques in other areas, like people had their own little tribes, and a lot of times you didn't have in-house beefs, but you had beefs with people from different tribes in different areas,
right, right,
and we
right,
and we was able to get those leaders from those tribes to come together, and then you can hold the beef down, and
right, right.
that's something that we can do on the streets now. You get people from certain areas, you know what I mean, and that have influence, and then you get them to talk to the younger people, and they respect the guy from their neighborhood. It would be so easy for us to stop the violence in Philadelphia.
And something you just mentioned, and this is what this program is about, is that we have to develop coalitions. Because
Yes.
you're doing something, I'm doing something, so and so doing something, so and so, but we're kind of in our own
Right.
silo.
Right. Right. Right.
And we have to coordinate it, because one
Right.
of the things I've learned, is that you have to gang tackle these young people. What I mean is this, and this is what we had. They have to hear. They don't just have to hear positive messaging. They have to hear it from every corner.
Right.
I
Right.
remember a time I was living in Jersey, North Jersey at this time growing up, that if a neighbor saw you doing something,
That's right.
they would correct you on the spot, and you got a hell of an ass whooping because not only did you get beat for doing whatever it was you did, you also got beat for embarrassing your parents.
Right.
I
Right. Right.
mean,
Right.
but so that whole concept, it takes a village to raise a child. What that means to me is that the messaging has to be consistent.
Right.
They
Right.
can't hear from Mikal something different what they hear from me.
Right, right, right,
And I
right,
think that's why I feel we need a coalition. I call it Kofi,
right.
coalition of former inmates. We all need to be giving out the same messaging.
Well,
So,
that's why that was one of the reasons why I came on your show because I
right.
haven't talked to you in maybe 20 years.
Yeah, it's been
You
a
know what I
long
mean?
time.
You know, it's been a long time. I'm saying, but we have to reconnect those dots with people
Right,
that are like-minded, have been through the same kind of experiences.
right.
So I said, yeah, if you're doing something positive, I want to support you. I want to come on your show and give my 2 cents. But you know, what I mean, it's part of just us working together, man. And if we can show that we can work together, other brothers can come in, and we can all work together because everybody has a piece of a puzzle that we can make a complete picture. And you
Mm-hmm.
keep holding your piece to yourself, we can't bring this picture to completion because you want to hold on to your piece, man. Everybody bring their pieces to the table. We can get a clear picture of where we're going.
Exactly. And it's called coalition building. You know what I
Yes,
mean?
sir. Yes,
And
sir.
briefly, we got about 4 minutes left. Something you touched on earlier, I want you to delve on. One of the things about being a so-called reformed felon or whatever is that talk about having to take responsibility for your own self. You know, we a lot of times. I remember my grandmother used to always say, "Every time you point your finger, it's three pointing back at you." You know what I mean?
Right.
So one of the key characteristics that we go through is that we get to a point where we have to take the responsibility of the outcome of our lives. We have to take that responsibility. Can you talk about that? How that journey into you know figuring out you know what, this is all on me.
Well, you know what? That's a part of manhood, though. Me and a brother were just talking about that today because we with a lot of younger people that maybe been raised by women, and
Mm-hmm.
all they do is sit around and complain. They complain about this didn't happen, that didn't happen, this one didn't do that, this didn't do the other. But as you grow mature into manhood, and my father put this in me at a young age, telling me to stand up for what I believe in, stand up for the things that I say. I got to back them up. You know,
Mm-hmm.
so when you growing as a man, you know that you have to take responsibility for the things, your actions, the things you do, and you have to think like a man, think for the future, think for those coming behind you. Um, it's just, and I think it's part of being an alpha man, and some people just don't get it. But it's for us to, to create the narrative so people see you have to take on responsibility to be a man. You know what I mean?
And
You have to take on responsibility.
the reason I brought that
And
up.
and and I'm
Go
also
ahead.
going to say because I've all the times that I've been to prison several times, I never brought anybody with me.
Mhm.
And I have never had a rappy, so I was taking responsibility even in my wrong. But I'm saying that's part of being a man, taking
Right,
responsibility.
right,
And then a lot of times you won't do what you might have in your mind to do if you know you can't pass it for somebody else to take the fall for you. A
right.
lot of guys put other people out there, and I never was like that. A lot of guys put other people out there to do things that they wouldn't do, and let other people take the fall.
Mhm.
So but those things wouldn't happen if you had to take your own responsibility for the things that you did in life. And that's a big point of being a man is taking responsibility. And that's part of what we need to help these young people know that's part of manhood, man, being responsible for yourself and others.
Absolutely. But it's imperative to grow. You can't
Yeah,
grow. You
right,
can't grow if you don't understand that life starts from within. You have to take responsibility from day one of your action, deeds, and thoughts. So a lot
right,
of people don't realize that if I'm a criminal, I'm not a criminal because of just poverty. I'm a criminal because I have criminal thoughts. And I got to change my criminal thinking in order to change my criminal behavior. And that's one of the messages I think we got to get across. Because one of the things we have less than a minute, one of the things that we all have in common is that we changed the way we thought. That helped us change our behavior.
and I want to make a point on changing that. I didn't get that true change, man, until spirituality became real for me.
Yeah,
Like doing the right thing, man, and knowing that there's a higher force
right.
that that's watching, or a higher force that you that's there, above yourself. But spirituality is really a part of this whole growth and development. You
And we're gonna
can't
have
just
to
get in.
we're gonna have to end on that note because I don't want you to get cut off. And I do want
Okay.
to thank you for joining me. And I want you, when I send this to you, it's gonna be on my YouTube channel. I want you spread it, send the word, so we can all get this message and build this coalition that I'm trying to build within us. So thanks again. Tell your brother I said what's up. You know what I mean? And that I'll be on the golf course one